So you see how small this is? What do you want bigger in the whole screen? Hold on, oh, video, I need video. Oh. Okay. All right. And then I know how to get rid of the recording. Well, you don't want to start the recording. No, I do. Unless you. Thank you.
Everything is so.
No, it was not recorded, but I'm sure we can live with that too. Okay.
All right. Okay, does everybody see everything? Slides, I mean,
Icon, so I'll just look there. Yeah.
all right, so I'm here to present the Priority Conservation Area project. And this was with Catherine. She was the motivator who did a lot of the work. I also had my intern, Ben Fair, help me out with this. And then together we put this, put this together, this nomination. So at the end of this, I'm hoping that the Conservation Committee will support the nomination of, or the designation of the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor as a priority conservation area. And then what is, hang on, let me get rid of a lot of clutter. Okay, so did I skip one here? Sorry, what happened? Okay, here we go. I can't, it's cutting off the top of my screen, but I think it says, what is a priority conservation area? Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, so these are regionally significant areas to be protected and improved in the entire Bay Area. So the Association of Bay Area Governments is the lead organization, lead agency that is managing the priority conservation area. So it's the entire 9-county area. PCAs are nominated by local governments with land use authority. So Portola Valley counts as an agency that can nominate an area. And then priority conservation areas are identified by a specific geography based on eligibility maps. And those maps are determined by the scientists at ABAG. So they have gone through the entire Bay Area and determined what parts of it qualify for each different type of priority conservation area. And then those that want to nominate a particular area, Catherine took, looked at Portola Valley. She went through the eligibility maps and she created a mapped polygon with the help of the project manager over at ABAG, and identified the actual geography of the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor. And every PCA is characterized by one or more of 5 different priority conservation area types. So those include natural land, which is sort of what you would imagine it would be. It's just complete open space, native habitat, undisturbed areas, of which there's very little within Portola Valley's town limits. Working land, which is agricultural land that the Bay Area wants to preserve and protect. I don't think we have any working land within Portola Valley. Perhaps, but I don't know.
I think the criteria for both the natural land and the working land is they have to be outside of city limits. So by definition, they are right.
And then urban greening is areas that are actually within cities, more urban areas. So Portola Valley doesn't really qualify so much. It's really meant to be for communities that, you know, have sidewalks and they're trying to bring more greenery, trying to protect some of the creeks that run through some of the cities and the more developed towns, and trying to deal with stormwater projects. Recreation is the one that fits the best with Portola Valley, because the main point of recreation is for trails and bike paths, as well as to a certain extent recreation such as playing fields. But the playing field portion of recreation really is more designed for the urban areas that don't have access to natural areas, don't have access to parks. So that part of recreation is really more focused on the urban side, whereas for us, the big focus is trails and bike path. And then finally, climate adaptation is one type that can only be used in coordination with one of the other four. So you can't just do climate adaptation. But the main points of climate adaptation is for habitat migration opportunities, dealing with sea level rise or dealing with creek, flooding, 100-year floods, so creek plains, flooding plains, dealing with very high risk, how you can manage that to reduce the intensity of future wildfires. And then for more urban areas, it also deals with the heat island effect of concrete and trying to lessen that. So when Catherine went through the maps, what worked the best for the entire Alpine Road Scenic Corridor was a combination of recreation with the climate adaptation on top of that. So that's what we decided to go with. And then, so why nominate PCA? So it is an opportunity to elevate local conservation priorities into a larger regional planning framework. And then key for us is that PCAs are eligible to apply for PCA grants, which would fund local projects that advance Bay Area conservation priorities, such as lands with regional connectivity or significance. The area becomes part of a regional conservation framework, and then it.
Can I interrupt you? Would you rather? I don't know if I can remember the question all the way to the end. It makes us grant eligible. Must the grants be used for that specific corridor then, right?
More or less. I have seen a couple grants where they created like in this case, they were creating a trailhead for a trail. And so they wanted to create better access to the trail and create a sort of a parking lot or some such, thing. And I don't remember exactly if that parking lot per se was within the geography. I've seen some other things where they've created linkages, which may not be within the particular geography. So I'm not 100% sure. We'd have to go back through all the old applications to see how expansive they are. But tomorrow we're having the town council is having their annual evaluation of the capital improvement projects that are being suggested, for which we don't quite have enough funding for. But one of them I noticed is the Dwight Crowder Bridge over near Aristodero. I think that's a project that's on the list. So that would be something that, if we approve this PCA, we could then apply to have funding for that project, because we certainly don't have the current funding in-house. So another reason to get the PCA for the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor is that there's just tremendous opportunity to improve the linkages between multiple open space preserves within and adjacent to Portola Valley. As you'll see on the next maps, a lot of the open space preserves and nature preserves are already PCAs. So Hawthorns and Mid-Penn and Post, they've all applied long ago. So those areas are already protected. So this is a fabulous linkage between all of those within the town. I don't know what they're applied under. Yeah, I didn't check it.
Sorry. I would think that the hawthorns would have to be either recreation or it would have to be recreation. Because it
Since it's
couldn't be urban
within-
greening,
right,
because it's within the city limits and the other two are reserved for outside.
Must be recreation because of the trails. I think.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
can we
Fine.
see that? Where can you look, where can you look
Um,
up what the
I think,
destination-
did I, in the information I provided, I think there was a link to PCA. Well, maybe not, but I can send out the link. If you just Google PCA grants, it'll come up to their website and then there's their GIS mapping that then takes you in, and it's not the friendliest program in the world to use, but you have to select kind of what the different types are,
Mhm.
and it shows up on the map. Right?
So, but you only have to do that if you are gonna be interacting with the map. If you just want to read, you don't have to do any of that stuff. If you
Does it-
just want to read about the criteria and how they're categorizing things, how they're, and they have a list of the grants that they've given. And so that's just available on their website.
I think Marianne's asking though about seeing the map with the different areas
I-
marked and
I would
indicated.
like to see what Hawthorne has been identified as. Is it open lands or is it
The Alpine Road,
recreation?
oh, Hawthorne's, yeah.
the Hawthorne? I just would like to see that.
I would
So
guess
would like-
recreation.
It has to be recreation. It can't be anything else.
Yeah, I would just like to look, yeah.
And then the other reason to make it a PCA, to designate it a PCA, is that it does provide another layer of protection for the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor, as well as to the habitats and wildlife that live and travel through the area, which I think is important to say. You know, we'll be able to now, once it's approved, say, oh, this area is actually a priority conservation area. We need to be careful. So here's the map. It's actually, I think, 127 acres. Was
I think
that the
that's what
number?
she said. Yeah.
That's what she mapped out. So believe it or not, even though it's thin and skinny, I
Mhm.
suppose 127 acres worth of preserved land. It extends from the property, the town limits at Ladera. It goes all the way along Alpine Road on both sides of the road, all the way up to Los Trancos Creek until you get to, must be Arrastradero. I don't know exactly where the cut in is, but, and then it continues along. It includes the whole open, Frog Pond open space area, and then it takes a little curve and comes over to the Coal Mine Ridge. It ends at the Coal Mine Ridge. So the green areas are all the open space areas and the nature preserves that have already been given the PCA designation. So you see Arrastradero, you see Hawthorns, and you see the Coal Mine Ridge / Windy Hill areas. Oops. So it includes, in terms of trails, it obviously includes the Alpine Trail, which is on both sides of the street. It includes the Dwight Crowder Memorial Trail, and it has links to the trails in the Coal Mine Ridge, Windy Hill Open Space, as well as, numerous other trails that are along Alpine Road. And it also includes 3 playing fields for community and recreation, the Ford Field, the Rosati's, and the Corte Madera Soccer Field. I should note that we presented to Trails last week, and they approved already the designation. So at least we're 1 down, 2 more.
Rebecca, does it include?
It comes up to the border with the creek. I don't know.
Up
kind
to
of
the creek.
I don't know if it includes the middle, goes to the middle of the creek, or I don't know 100%.
So what Kate said, I asked her how compulsive they get about the actual lines, and she says they're not compulsive at all. It goes to the creek, probably halfway.
Okay.
Probably where the town
Yeah.
town line is.
Right.
And I don't know if the town line is in the middle of the creek or.
I think it's in the middle of the creek.
It's the county line.
Yeah,
Right.
But that creek kind of moves.
And it
has
moves,
been moving
right.
a lot, so I.
Description of the county is that it's the center line of the creek
Oh,
between the 2 counties.
So as it moves, do we lose land or gain land? So how do PCA designations lead to PCA grant awards? So a PCA grant award supports projects and activities inside or providing access to a PCA. So your question there is that. PCA grants in partnership with the California State Coastal Conservancy Funding have invested over 38 million in PCAs to date. And there's 8 million coming available in what's called OBAG 3 PCA grant round 2. And then every year, hopefully, there will be money put aside for PCA grants. And some potential projects that, you know, we kind of threw out there were an idea of habitat restoration of the Frog Pond open space, strengthen the habitat and trail linkages between the open spaces along Alpine Road, improve the bike trails through the corridor, and then perhaps even spend money on planning for a trail linkage from the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor over to Arrastradero Preserve, which would involve a lot of feasibility studies. It's all
And
very
another
private
county.
another county and private property, but perhaps you could get money to do some of the studies. So the next steps, so we have already done number 1, which is identify the PCA nomination and submit it by May 2nd. So we've completed that. And then engage the local community by briefing committees and get their recommendation to town council to adopt the PCA designation. So like I said, we've already presented and gotten approval from the Trails and Paths. We're doing presentation to conservation today. And then June 6th, we'll be doing BPTS. And then we are scheduled right this minute to be on the June 11th town council meeting to get final designation and final approval. And then once we get approval and it gets submitted to ABAG, then after the summer, after their board action where they incorporate all of these new PCAs, then they'll issue their grants and will be eligible to submit grant applications.
Why is the open space committee not on this schedule?
Probably because originally I was just going to go with 1. And then you wanted trails, so I did trails. And then because a lot of it is also deal with bikes, I did bikes. I thought after 3, that was probably enough. I mean, I don't know how much local community interaction we need. I do have somewhat limited time, but yeah, so I think it's enough unless open space calls me up and says, you've got to come to my next meeting. But it was just that the timeline was very constrained because of the June 11th. They've given us a little bit longer now extension. So if we don't get it done by June 11th, it's possible, but town council's not meeting July 8th, I think, or July 9th, whatever that date is. So the next meeting would be the end of July, and then we're like leaving literally 1 day. You know, I felt it was.
Yeah, because the extended date is the 25th of July, right? So
Yes, it was leaving like 1 day, and I just
not good.
felt that will make me a little nervous. So I felt it better. Let's just get it through and get it done. So that's it. So if
I'd
other
like to bring to
questions-
Mary Ann's attention that on pages 16 and 17, there is the list of the agenda packet. There's a list of all the criteria for the different types, so you can go through that.
Well, it could be a playing field, or it could be just a park, you know. Mhm. It could be a dog park, yeah.
Could be Frog Pond open space.
Rebecca, you made one comment that the PCA designation adds a layer of protection to the scenic corridor, but PCA designation doesn't restrict activities in any way, right? I just wonder, can you clarify what that means?
It doesn't have any restriction on land use for a town or a city. My view is just, we're able to then say, you know, if someone questions, we'll now be able to say, oh, not only is this open space, but it's also got priority conservation area designation. You know, and it's very important for habitat and wildlife corridors. And to me, it's just another layer in that respect. It's not protection, perhaps is a little too strong a word, but words sometimes matter a lot. So if someone says, oh, we have to build housing on board open space, you know, all of a sudden, well, now it's a priority conservation area. It's, you know, we need it for the habitat. We need it for wildlife corridor. We need it for floodplains. you know, it maybe gives us another layer of being able to push back, but there's no promise for that.
And remember, it's part of a large regional, system. So it just sort of plugs us into a system. And I think if we highlight it as a particular interest to us, then that elevates it in the regional framework. So
Oh.
it's not exactly protection, but it's support, I
Mhm.
think.
Right.
Well, it's about the money, but
So I included in the packet the actual resolution that would go, that the town would then approve. And then, you know, if you have more, and then of course, I don't know, hopefully everybody had a chance to read the actual information page that just detail pretty much what I just said. So if there's other questions.
I have a question for what just was discussed. For just a general understanding, if we look at Springdown, which is a defined open space, and as we know, you can't even put a bench there from our research from years ago. So I would like to understand what would happen if somebody would say Springdown is a recreation, for recreation. What would that mean? Would that be possible? Because it
Well,
would be sort of a
it doesn't-
contradiction in terms.
Right, the PCA designation doesn't overrule local land use. So if the open space rules for Springdown are that you cannot do any kind of park development, anything that's different than defined open space, then you wouldn't be able to do anything unless you change the designation for that property from the open space to some other designation. The
But
council
also,
would have to do
just
that.
to be clear, Springdown is not adjacent to the Alpine. It- no, Okay, so I was just trying to understand. Okay. So it's
So
out.
Yeah, yeah. So no, the designation would not change the zoning that's in a town.
yeah, it's definitely subservient.
And the grants are all generated from the local area. So the committee, for example, would say, okay, yes, we need to fix this bridge for the White Crowder, and you would submit it over to the town, and then they would put it on the list of things to do, and then an application would be created to submit if it made sense to submit to the PCA, to the ABAG for some funding. It would, you know, it comes from the town, from the residents, from the committees. They would decide, oh, well, we want a bike path fixed, or we want the frog pond needs some work, you know, so you'd submit that over to, you fill out the application and hope that you get some funding. It's definitely, it comes from internal, from the town. Any change, any application. Yes, Judy.
Two things. One, why didn't Portola Road, the scenic corridor, and Portola Road get incorporated? Is there a reason it got excluded? There must be.
It was hard enough to draw the map of that. And I felt that since this was connected to, so it was my decision. You
Okay.
remember that two months ago, I had a whole list of things. And I just narrowed it down to one. We can always add more.
Okay.
But that was my original dream, was to have both Portola and Alpine. But let me tell you, trying to do the mapping tool with that, no,
It
thank
was
you.
a lot of work for all of us.
Number two
So
is
just do
if-
Alpine Road, scenic
If we
corridor.
add this protection along Alpine Road, which I think is terrific, does it cause problems down the line if there are decisions made that we should widen Alpine Road for evacuation reasons? Is this going to be a burden in any way?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think this is a great idea. I have a question with respect to Dorothy Ford Park. I don't know what the status is of conversations with HCD, but I would be worried if HCD saw this as sort of an end run to add protection to Dorothy Ford Park, even if it was only sort of symbolic protection, because we're still on the line for the housing there. And I don't want to see anything that jeopardizes getting the housing element approved with an alternative site. So do you have a sense of whether or not HCD is gonna, how HCD would see this?
Well, the conversations with HCD have so far been about providing them with an alternative sites. They don't need an exact match, which is what we were kind of told before. They don't need an exact match. What they're concerned about is the actual very low income units, and they can be spread around onto more than one property. That's what they told the town. So that's where the town's been focusing on, these other properties that have shown a lot of interest in putting housing and units. So I know Terrence sent those to HCD along with the updated paperwork and response to the technical letter. And so now we're just waiting to find out, whether they will accept our paperwork. So I don't know. It's hard to tell with them. They have no deadlines to respond. It's, who knows? So we are still kind of at risk that they can come back and say, no, you absolutely have to zone for Dorothy Ford Park at MF 23, which doesn't mean that we'll build there, but I continue to have a concern about zoning open space to high density and then going back. So I'd rather not have to do that, but it's hard to say. I can't see them viewing this per se as blocking because it doesn't have any land use. It doesn't preempt any land use, so I don't see them complaining about that if we provide them with alternatives for where we're going to build those VLIs, which is still tricky.
Yeah, I guess I just wondered if the recent conversations with HCD had advanced that. It's more about, optics and symbols probably than anything else, but that's my concern.
I think somewhere along the line, the state passed a law that said you couldn't designate something as open space in order to avoid having to build on it. So that's already in there. So this doesn't, this isn't that, but I agree with you. The optics is a little, and I think we're trying to do that, but so maybe it should be, maybe something in the resolution should say that it's not, I don't know. I don't want to make any kind of a formal suggestion about that. I just think that if they wanted to go down that route, they would say, well, this doesn't protect it anyway. And if it doesn't have land use implications, then
And remember that many of the projects that could be funded through this would be connectivity to the creek and along the linear aspect, and that none of those things would have anything negative. I don't think that they would preclude any building project. It would just be providing funds to allow the continued movement through that area, I think is the way to look at it.
Yeah, it just endorses the nomination of Alpine Road Scenic Corridor as a priority conservation area. It doesn't say anything about that you can't build anymore on it.
but I think the optics part, come back to when you were making your presentation, you were saying, here's another layer of protection, et cetera. So I think we have to be careful about using that language as we go through this process.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Are there any questions online?
Yes, I have a question. This is Betsy Morgan Thaler. Just wanted, I have a question, but first just to say thank you so much, Rebecca and Catherine, for surfacing such an extraordinary possibility and executing on it. It's remarkable. I haven't ever seen the town move so quickly. So hats off to you both. And as I read through the ABAG website materials now, probably a month and a half ago, I was looking and struggling to identify a single downside to our application. Please correct me if either of you have seen anything that would suggest that there is a downside. I certainly couldn't find one. And then as well, I had a question just about weighing as we step into the prospects of applying for a grant. Do you partner with an individual from ABAG, and what advice do they give you? As I was listening to you and imagining improving our quasi bike lane towards I would imagine a more compliant bike lane where possible anyway, it would be so life protective and obviously considerably more expensive than doing the conservation work needed at Frog Pond. So how do you weigh the advantages of one application over another if you have learned anything? Thanks so much again.
I don't see any negatives. Again, it's for the perspective of Portola Valley, it's purely the ability to get funding for some projects for trails and paths, bike paths. In terms of an application for a project, I have to admit that I did not spend a ton of time going through all the ins and outs of the applications. I just reviewed what has been funded in the past, and what I saw was a ton of trails, a couple of access areas, but most of the work is trails. The gross majority is improving or creating new trails or some bike paths as well. I don't know if you're envisioning in terms of bike paths just expanding. I know that's been talked about in terms of an option for evacuation safety, is making a bike path wider and paved, and that could then be turned into an actual exit lane. I would think if it's going to be a safer bike path, that would probably be something that could be applied for. The sums, however, is probably way more than what they would ever fund. I don't think the funding for these projects are, tens of 10, 20, 30,000, whereas a bike path, we're talking millions probably.
Yeah, well, that's true for the whole of it, but I did see a number of $250,000 awards. So, and I saw larger than that too. So it's a question for us to pursue at a later time. Just very impressed with all of this and the creativity and work ethic applied. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we now have a new town engineer, and so I'm hoping that they'll have, and they're planning to hire a town technical engineer, someone underneath them. So I'm hoping that with a little bit more staff, we'll be able to spend a little more time applying for grants in general. So hopefully someone can investigate that. And I certainly encourage the committees to dig in deep to see what might be possible, because that's how things get done. We just don't have enough staff. They're so busy with just town business that anything extra just can't happen. So right now, I encourage all our volunteers and commissions, committees to put in the time to figure these things out, because things can happen when we do the work.
Here, here.
The only potential downside that I've been able to come up with as I've been thinking through this is if people are worried about us being incorporated into a regional network. People who want to keep Portola Valley separate and isolated may be concerned about it, but that's the only thing that I can think of.
And I feel like the benefits outweigh that in terms of protecting a habitat and protecting a wildlife corridor and protecting a creek shed and floodplain. So
And it doesn't give any larger body any control over the land at all. So that's, yeah.
So at this point, I would, if we're finished with questions, I think you go to discussion and then I would hope that you would vote to approve the resolution.
I'd like to thank Catherine for the, the amount of work that went into this, the careful, detailed work that went into it is remarkable. And thanks, because it made it easier, especially taking in the concerns people had last time when it was really new to us, and the way that you kind of restructured to answer those questions is really very, very helpful. Last time I was like full of questions, and this time, having read through all the stuff before the meeting and then hearing this, I feel very positive.
We need a motion to approve.
So just to be clear, what we are proving is that we support moving forward with this process, right? So we're supporting the proposed resolution. I just want to make sure I understand what,
You're
Recommending to the
town
council.
to approve the designation of the Alpine Road Scenic Corridor as a priority conservation.
So you want to read that off and say it?
Say so moved.
So, yeah.
so I move to agree to support the resolution being presented to the town council.
Move to recommend to the council.
Whatever,
Second.
recommend.
Second.
Excellent.
Unanimously.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The one comment I would make in terms of the evacuation route, I think that would be very, very difficult because it would only make sense then that Ladera does it too. Because if Ladera doesn't widen the road, there is no evacuation route.
Ladera has its own lane. So
Oh, they have a
If-
center lane?
yeah.
Ah, okay, yeah, that's true. Okay.
maybe not at the
Take it
very,
back.
very end, but,
All right, thank you so much. So let's move on with the old business. Old business. So the wildlife corridors and the fencing, we had a subcommittee meeting, and one of the things that came out that we will have a public study session, which you all know, will be on 6/10 at 4 o'clock in the schoolhouse. We further advanced our thinking that smaller than 1 acre parcels will not be considered in our wildlife corridor consideration. The 2 acre parcels, we will need very few changes because the setbacks in the 2 acre plus parcels are very good. They're 50 to 20 feet in the front and 20 feet all around the other 3 sides, which is a pretty good corridor. Let me just finish one. What are you seeing? Oh, it's
What
not on
you're
the screen
seeing.
here, so let me see. Thank you. Let me just see. Because on the screen here, I don't see her.
That little X over the,
Oh, that X. That's all I can do.
oh,
Okay, where was I? Okay, coming back to the 2 acres. The one thing we will have to consider is changing the width requirements of the wire mesh. Because it's very clear to me when I walk through Westridge, although these forest fences are allowed to have wire mesh, And if the wire mesh is like that little and it's on the property line, it does, so that's one thing we have to discuss, but I don't think that will be very difficult to update the ordinance. And that brings us then to the meeting on the 10th, where we will focus on the 1 acre. And this is not a free-for-all study session. I'll put together an agenda. We will obviously, we want public input, but we'll put a certain amount of time on the public input so that we don't have 2 hours of public input and then we have no time left to do any processing. And that's the update.
I
so
don't
far
know
for
if
the-
we can, I don't know if we can do that. You know, you read about these meetings that go on till 4 AM some places.
There is a budget meeting so there is a budget meeting at 6. We have to leave the room before 6. So there is an absolute hard stop.
I'm just saying there, I think there's a legal issue about saying, okay, we're going to hear from 10 people, or we're only going to hear from people for an hour. It's like if somebody shows up and
We
wants to
can
talk.
say maximum amount of time they're allowed to speak.
Oh, yeah, for
So
sure.
we'll do that.
But if 100 people show up, I think you have to find a way.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, if 200 people show up, great. Something positive will come out of it. Any questions regarding this? If not, then let's move rapidly along. Woodside Fire, Judy, can you give an update of the subcommittee meeting with Kim?
I think we talked about that at the last meeting.
Well, but we had a meeting after the last meeting. We had a subcommittee meeting.
We basically went over the details of this evening presentation where Kim is going to present and then Nona's going to present, and they're going to have it in the form of a conversation.
And the date, we didn't have the date last month.
Oh, we didn't have the date.
No, we didn't have a
Okay.
date.
All right, so it's there on the agenda, 6/3, which is a Tuesday evening, and PM in the community hall. And should have seen, I've been doing some advertising for it in the forum, and it was in the town, the weekly update for the town,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it's starting to get out.
You know, Judy, what just comes to my mind, could you ask the fire department to put that event on their website? Can't hurt.
I think Kim said she'd do that when we
Oh,
had the
did she?
meeting, and we divvied up I don't have my notes from the meeting, but
Oh,
we
okay.
divvied up who would do what. Because there was one thing you were gonna do. Can't remember what it was, but you were gonna
So
do one of the things.
maybe I could jump in. I met with Kim last Thursday to go over the outline and get her input. And so we dovetailed our outlines. And she has arranged to videotape the whole thing. And she is putting it on the fire district website.
Okay. All right, so that's that. Kudos, do we have kudos this month?
Maybe I ought to do kudos to the people who are mowing their weeds.
Okay, that's a good idea. Tip of the month, Catherine?
So I'm thinking that I'm seeing a lot of
I'm thinking I'm seeing a lot of yellow star thistle popping up.
Already?
and I haven't seen a whole lot of flowers, but I've seen a lot of stems. So I don't know, it may be a little early for yellow star thistle. Well, I did all of the purple thistles last month or the month before. So, I forget what other things, and I had done nesting. I did nesting last month, thistles the month before. So,
Weed cutting would take care of the yellow starfish. If we do weed cutting.
mowing for,
Mowing.
yeah, I can do that.
Remind people that, it's mowing time and that would, because usually it blooms quite a bit later and it's difficult to find until it blooms. And mine is nowhere near to be seen because I weed whack. Really, so.
Yeah. I see, the color really stands out to me, but anyway,
did I-
that's, yeah, good.
Once we see the color, then it's a while before the meeting, and it's a while before the thing gets out, then they kind
Yeah.
of seed. So I think, yeah.
Do
we
it
might have-
both, do both.
Yeah.
Or just
Okay.
or include it, just say if you mow low, you'll get your thistles even before you can identify them.
Yep.
Did I catch correctly that we're doing mowing of weeds for kudos and mowing of weeds for tip of the month?
Yeah,
I think it's good
Reinforcement.
Yeah.
Reinforcement, exactly.
reinforcement, motivation. Okay, what's blooming?
So I'm so disappointed that she sent out the third of my spring things with no pictures.
Oh, well.
So I asked her and I think she's gonna send it out again, but I am taking nominations for June blooming.
What's blooming June, Peter? Okay. I don't know
I've
what
said-
that is.
What's the common name?
So
What's the common name?
that's a mallow.
I've got blue dicks and ethereal spears blooming in mine.
I think that would be great because I already have one that I did that helps identify the different blue bulby things. So
Coyote
I'll do
mint.
that. I'll do that.
Coyote mint is blooming, blooming beautiful.
Okay, okay, those are some great ideas. Good, thank you.
Okay. Sticky monkey flower is blooming if you like it.
I'm not sure I've ever done one on sticky monkey flower. I've got to do that.
Can invite people to my house, what happens when you do nothing to a hillside with sticky monkey flower. Okay.
Good.
The AstroTurf, I assume nothing happened.
Nothing has happened and I would like to see that to somebody else because I can't
Okay.
manage it right now.
So should we, okay, is there somebody here who wants to take it? Otherwise, let's let it die.
We can be comatose for a while.
Okay, nobody taking, we'll let it die. Okay. To be resuscitated.
So
another
it
time.
just leaves, it leaves open the issue of what the various subcommittees, when they go to a site visit, do if there's AstroTurf proposed. So we just sort of fly
Yeah,
by the seat of
yeah.
the pants. Okay.
yeah, currently, we are okay if it's a small area of AstroTurf. So if it becomes an issue, we need to revive it. That's a good point. All right, so Nona and I need to sort of try to figure out to get hold of this man with the video. He hasn't responded yet. We're working on that because we really want that video. It's such a good video. And then the student owl box, Yogi. Everybody has a printout of your write-up.
Yeah, and I mean, as Nona had suggested, I think it's more as an informational thing to the town that we inform, I don't know, Public Works, and then we just go ahead and place it, as we have done work at the Frog Pond before as part of the subcommittee engagement there.
What I would like to see, and we can ask the student to do that, I would like to see a really nice write-up of that work as an advertisement for what we're doing. Yogi, do you think, I'm sure she's very good in writing. What's her name?
Elisa.
Eliza. You
Yeah,
want to
Eli-
talk to Eliza about doing a little article for the town newsletter?
Yeah, I mean, she gave us another write-up about herself, so I can just ask her. I probably see her on Thursday to kind of do a little bit more newsletter article style, and then we can circulate it.
Okay, because it would be really nice to do some advertising.
Yeah.
It's a nice project. It's it's a student who does it. She lives in town, and it's a good project.
Yeah, will
Okay.
do.
Can I make a comment? Has
Yes.
it been installed?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Because another person contacted me about looking into not frog pond, into owl boxes and stuff. She's a college student that's gotten a grant to study, I don't know, habitat.
Well, why don't you ask her to contact me?
Okay.
I'll work with
Okay.
her. I mean, whatever, yeah. Okay. Yogi, that's it?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
it.
thank
Okay.
you. Frog Pond, we already talked.
Yeah, no, I can, on that note, I can just mention, so I'm waiting for the school to inform us if and when they start replacing the soccer field grass. That's still pending. And yeah, I need to contact, unless Nona or somebody else, Judy, you heard when the town has scheduled us for the first mowing of the pond. It's still a little bit wet, but there's a lot of harding grass. So I don't know again, when are we scheduled to do that?
When did we do it last year?
I think they did two. They did one, I don't know the exact dates. They did one on the perimeter, and then when it dried out, they came with the second time around. So I'll check when we did it last time.
If things are going to seed, you might just ask Justin to prioritize that outer mowing. Usually they don't mow the whole thing the first time, but they mow a lot of it.
When does the thing go to seed?
It's already starting. The harding grass is call it in full bloom.
Okay, ASAP.
Yeah, I just looked at the area that wasn't mowed by the town along Fort Field. And at the one inside, and there is now, in the last 2 years, it's just exploded, the hobbling grass. And it should be mowed now, not 2 weeks from now.
Okay, Yogi, needs to be mowed now.
Yep,
Action item for you.
I'll reach out to them. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Nona, open space, any update?
Two updates. At the last meeting of the Open Space Committee, we took up the topic of wildlife corridors, kind of in parallel to what's happening in this committee, mainly to ask whether or not there was some sort of initiative that was really germane to that committee as opposed to this committee. There was a lot of interesting discussion, and I think that there were sort of two perspectives. One is that, you know, there's a real need for wildlife corridors, and there are areas in town that could be looked at, such as the small underutilized open spaces that have been neglected for a long time, and we could look at those as open space. But there's also a strong perspective that Portola Valley's doing enough already, and that the actual requirements of the bill are not as broad-based or sweeping as the room to roam title suggests, and that maybe this is something that we could kind of just wait and see a little bit more on. So that's where that stands. The other thing that is probably worth mentioning is the joint subcommittee between the two committees to look at maintenance of open space. And Judy is really taking the lead on that now. So I'm going to suggest, Judy, that you give an update if there is anything.
Well, last time in this meeting, we talked about that we'd walked spring down, and we'd made the decision to sort of pull back for 2 years and not try to carefully control it because the staff wasn't up to it currently. So I went to Open Space and just spoke with Open Space on behalf of the joint committee. And one of the things that came up there was it's a little unclear about how the Open Space a year ago suggested, and then the town council appropriated $65,000 for the upkeep of the various open spaces, and that money had been budgeted, but it's not entirely clear which pieces of it been used, how it's been used, what the work that has been done at Springdown. You know, we don't have access to that information, so it was suggested that we get a meeting, probably you, me, we need to meet with the new engineer anyway to meet him and Justin, the four of us, and pose those questions about what's the stream of money are you using, and remind them that all of this was appropriated by the council.
Let's do
and,
that as quickly as
should be there
possible.
to be,
Yeah.
should be used, right? So I'll draft a first sort of, let's have a meeting thing and
Okay.
talk with you
That
about it
sounds good, yeah.
before we send it off. And that's sort of where we left it. No,
Rebecca, when does the fiscal year start?
July
July
Okay,
1st,
so we,
but-
okay, we better do this quickly.
But I have seen a couple warrants related to charges to the open space fund, related to maintenance in the last month, maybe the last town council meeting, and, or maybe tomorrow's, I forget, but I think the last one showed some charges to open space.
Okay, all right. Public Works, no update. Trails and Path, Teresa?
So Scott Weber attended the meeting, which was great, because we really haven't had anybody from Public Works attending Trails and Paths meetings since Howard left, and gave an update. One of the things he updated was the mowing is scheduled to begin for trails starting this Thursday. And actually, some of the mowing was, he sort of indicated was going to start today, but mostly it's going to start this Thursday. And they have a plan for what mowing is going to be done with preservation of the wildflowers in mind to try to mow those trails last. There was a small amount of discussion about the recommendation. There has been a recommendation to increase the width of mowing along the trails for fire prevention, but then that starts to impact wildflowers, et cetera, et cetera. And so for this year, because the mowing is already scheduled and the plan has already been laid out, it's going to be done as it has been in the past. So it'll be approximately a foot to either side, but it may be broadened going forward. And then the other update was that Shady Trail repairs are complete now, and the
All right.
logs have been placed, et cetera, since I know, even though that wasn't really 100% this committee's involvement, I know there's been a lot of interest. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, actually, I have seen, they have mowed the back Palmer Lane Trail, and I've seen they have mowed it wider, and the wildflowers are gone anyway already. And I think actually this is very positive because they are cutting the invasives as well. So I think we would support that. At this time, the wildflowers have all seeded.
Not so much up in the ranch. There are some
Oh, on
trails
the
up in the ranch that where that is not the case, and they are
In the
specifically looking at maintaining
That sounds good.
those.
All right.
So
Thank
should I change the kudos to thank all the people that worked together to make the Shady Trail thing
Yes.
happen?
Oh, but we usually don't single out people.
No,
don't
we weren't
single-
going to do people. We're going to do, because there were the
Yeah,
town
let's
and
do
and we could just say residents,
do it.
town, et cetera. You have a concern about that, Lisa? No, I want to hear it because I don't want to do it if I shouldn't do it. No?
What's your concern, Teresa?
I just didn't know that was a conservation kudo was all.
Oh,
That'd be more a trail.
oh,
issue.
it's more a
Okay.
trail issue.
Okay,
Oh,
forget
okay.
it.
Okay, let's leave it the way it is. Okay. Okay. Okay, then wildfire preparedness. So the next meeting is on 6/18, and the previous meeting was on January, I believe, 15. So in the January meeting, it was, Jennifer said that she would have the meetings quarterly. It looks to me, but I'll learn more on 6/18, that maybe the wildfire meetings are every 6 months. We'll see. So that's all I have. And then nothing has happened. We haven't had any AACC meeting. Site permits. Judy and I have started working on this additional bullets to have a better boilerplate. And then Judy and I both went on vacation. So we will put this on, we'll have another meeting and we'll come with a draft next month. And then you saw the two trees, and just to clarify, because what Teresa said, Cherokee had no dead trees. Cherokee were a number of redwood trees that were within that close to the house. And the garage and the house and everything is buckling, and we got very good photos. And I walk by there every day, so there was no site visit necessary to approve them. There were no dead trees. And with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 8:17, which is an absolute record. Yeah, for everybody. But don't get used to this. Next month we'll have, we just wanted to really have enough time with Rebecca. This was important.
I don't know
Okay.
if we really made clear that it would be nice if all of our members could come to the study session. That.
Oh,
or
yes.
Are you assuming that we're all going to be there?
Can I get a show of hand who is coming to the study session?
I think I can
It's
go.
on, yeah, we're adjourned. So this is